Hello everyone and welcome back to the grand final of the Magnus Carlsen Chess Tour. We are in match 4. Match 3 was won by Magnus, so now it's 2-1 in matches for Magnus. So if Magnus wins this one, then he wins the match and he goes to the finals to meet the winner of the Hikaru versus Daniil Dubov matchup. Now it's again quite the game. Magnus was victorious in game 1. It was a pretty nice grind with the white pieces, and now we have this one where Ding has the white pieces. So this is game 2. Of match 4, so let's check it out, as this one is really a beauty. So for those of you who are asking why I'm in the new setup, I'm on vacation and I will be until 21st of August, so that's why I'm here. I'm using my laptop. I don't have my original setup that I use at home, and some of you said that the sound was a bit off in the previous video, that the microphone was too low, that the sound of the moves was too loud. So I tried to improve on it in this video. Hope it's better now. But yeah, returning to the game, it's Ding versus Magnus, and the Ding opens with d4. We have knight to f6 by Magnus, we have c4 and g6. Magnus goes for the King's Indian defense. We have g3, Ding prepares to fianchetto the light square bishop, and bishop to g7. Bishop to g2, and Magnus castles. We have knight to c3 and d6, preparing to strike in the center with e5 at some point. We have knight to f3 and knight to c6. We have castles by Ding, and we have e5 finally by Magnus, and the d5, grabbing more space in the center, as one will usually do against the King's Indian defense. Knight to e7, and now e4, so grabbing the center. Next, you want to play a rook b1, you want to go a3, a4, a4, b4, and push on the queen side, c5, and so on. And black, of course, will try to play on the king side. And here, the most often move used is knight to d7. You want to free your f-file for the push of the f-pawn, and there are over 300 games in the database where this exact maneuver happened. However, Magnus goes for b6, and it's an extremely rare move. It was used a few times. One more notable game is from the 1950s. Panov used it against Tigran Petrosian, and he was able to defeat him. It was quite a beautiful attacking game. So as Magnus is a big fan of the classics, I imagine he took some looks at this game and maybe found some, not maybe, of course, found some improvements. But okay, rook b1, Ding will continue pushing on the queen side, and a5. Magnus prevents the immediate b4. And here we have rook to e1. So this is the difference. In the Petrosian versus Panov game in 1950, a3 was played, but here we have rook to e1 by Ding. And it is, of course, as of move 11 that we have a completely new game. So let's see what happens here. Knight to d7. Again, Magnus needs to free up the f file for the f pawn. With a3, now preparing b4 and h6. With knight to h4 by Ding. Ding wants to control the f5 square. He knows f5 is coming, so the knight and the pawn control it. Queen is coming to c2 to help out with the control of the f5 square. So f5 immediately, while it's still possible. E captures, g captures. Black messes up his pawn structure in front of the king, but it is something you will very often do when you go for the King's Indian defense, and now you will continue pushing. So queen c2 puts pressure on the f5 pawn, and knight to f6 now. Now the bishop will also help out with the defense, the knight as well. E4 will be pushed at some point to continue pushing, free up the dark square bishop, and so on. So b4. As like we said, white will continue pushing on the queen side. Bishop d7 by Magnus, and now c5. So we have a captures on b4, a captures, and now finally e4, because this puts a lot of pressure on the e5 pawn. Since this pawn defends it, Magnus decides to advance it. We have e4, and now c6. And this is now a pretty closed position on the queen side. And you have to decide what to do. Bishop to c8 looks a bit ugly. If b5 is played at some point, that bishop is never coming out of that tomb. So bishop to e8, you can now shift it to this diagonal if needed. You can shift it to this diagonal if needed. Wow, those are some weird arrows. Also your d5 pawn is under attack. So here Ding decides to go for f3. He gives up the d5 pawn to pick up the e and f pawn and open up the position, since his king is a little bit safer than Carlsen's king. So we have knight f captures on d5. Magnus does accept this. We have knight captures, and f captures on e4. Captures followed by captures. And now Magnus needs to do something about this. His knight is under attack, he needs to move it, and he decides to go for not back with knight to f6, but rather he goes knight to c3. Attack the rook, puts pressure on the bishop, makes sense. You want to trade up as much as possible, and then you will probably bring the queen into the game, bring the rook into the game as the bishop nicely defends it, and so on. However, this gives Ding an opportunity for a beautiful attacking move and an idea. So feel free to pause the video while I give you a couple of seconds and find this brilliancy, while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on taking your opponent into a deep dark forest. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's bishop captures on h6. And here, all of King's defenses have been shattered, and the question is, what can you do here? Is there any move that you can play? Well, obviously there are ideas. Of course, you can capture the rook on b1. Let's say you try capturing the rook. The problem is with capturing the rook, everything is forced from here. Bishop to h7, check, king h8, and now you pick up the bishop here. Rook captures here, and now it doesn't matter if the rook captures or the queen captures. If the rook captures, then you get a nice knight g6 check, king h7, you're going to go knight to f8 check, and now it doesn't matter. King g8, you're going to go queen h7 check, king captures, and queen captures on g7 with mate. So that's what happens if the rook captures here. If the queen captures, however, not much different. You're just going to go still knight g6 check, king h7, you're going to capture the rook now with check. And now if you go back, it's the same idea. Or if you go capturing the bishop, then it's queen h7 check. You're going to go to g5, queen h4 check, king to f5, and now queen to f4 will be checkmate as the knight covers g6 and e6. So pretty wild stuff. So after this knight to c3 move, of course, capturing the rook is not possible. So what happens if after bishop captures on h6, you go bishop d4 check first? You don't allow any captures on g7. Let's say white retreats, bishop e3. Now we trade one of white's attackers, captures, and then capture the rook. It still doesn't work because now it's bishop to d5 check, and this is just amazing what happens here. King g7, now queen to b2 check, and black even gets to block it with the queen. However, knight to f5 check, and now it all depends. If you go, let's say, king to g6, then it's rook to e6, just winning the queen, as of course the bishop here guards this. But the more beautiful idea is after king to h7, now rook to e7 check, and now what do you do here? Well, you can even either give up the queen, or you can go king to h8, and now there's the real beauty. Now rook to e6, and this is just incredible. You can't move the queen as the queen is pinned. So one thing you can do is capture the queen on c2, but then the problem is rook to h6 is checkmate, as these two squares are covered by the knight and by the bishop. So whatever Magnus does here is just completely losing. So what else can you do? After bishop captures on h6, you could capture with this, but then the knight is just undefended, and then it's the game continues with white being so much better. He just grabbed the pawn. He traded well. I mean, all of white's pieces are placed beautifully, and it's just going to be a very hard position for black to play. So what Carlsen did after bishop captures, he played queen to f6 first. Now the knight is defended, there's more pressure on the bishop, and you've developed one more piece into the game. However, there's also a problem here, because here Ding goes bishop to h7 check, king to h8, and now again rook captures. Eliminating the light square bishop is crucial because you need this g6 square available for your knight. We have rook captures. You could ignore it by playing bishop captures again, but then again rook e7 is just deadly. I mean, it's just a disgustingly beautiful move. If queen captures, then knight check picks up the queen, and if you don't capture it, there's really no defense against knight to g6. The king has nowhere to go, and knight g6 is coming. So this is if you capture with the bishop. So rook f captures on e8 was played, but now knight to g6 check by Ding. King captures on h7, and now knight to f8 check. And again, if you go up, then it's queen to h7 check, king to f7, or doesn't really matter what you do, and now rook to f1. I mean, wins the queen whether you capture the knight or not, so it doesn't really matter. And even if captures, you do gain some material back, but now just bishop captures and everything is hanging. There are some discoveries. This is hanging, so it's just game over. So here after knight to f8, check, king captures on h6 was played, but now Ding goes in for the kill. Queen to h7, check, king to g5, and now queen to h4, check. And like in the previous variation, the knight here guards the g6 and e6 squares, so king f5, and of course Ding delivers queen to f4, and this is now checkmate. So incredible game by Ding, incredible that we see a nice beautiful checkmate on the board with the world champion being checkmated with his king on f7 on f5. And with this game, Ding equalizes match 4, so we'll see 2 more games in the Rapids, 2 more games of Blitz, and then maybe Armageddon. We'll see how it goes. Today I will probably be able to cover a few more games, but if not, see you again tomorrow. So yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. I'm sure Magnus hasn't. I would like to thank Polak Shlomo, Lars Evan Alamas, Stephen Ramsey, Daniel Narlo, and Thomas Connors for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the grand final of the Magnus Carlsen Chess Tour, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day. And Mid, of course, says hi. Hello. Such a good boy. See you soon.